So we closed last time with the question of how the small band of newly dubbed Muslims could possibly have experienced the kind of expansion that led the Ummah to grow within just over a century following the Prophet's death into the empire that this map portrays. And we said that the beginning of the answer to this question lies in the figure of Muhammad, and it's with Muhammad that we'll begin our discussion here. But I did just mention a word, and I want to write it here. The Ummah is the community of Muslims. It is not nationally defined, not ethnically defined. It is defined by faith and adherence. So we'll talk more about it, but the Ummah, as I use this word, this is the community of Muslims worldwide. So remember the context into which Muhammad was born. The tribal humanism of the Arabian Peninsula in a period of great socio-economic change. Urban expansion, a concentration of new wealth, the commercial oligarchy centered in Mecca and led by the Quraysh tribe. All of this led to a greater disparity between the rich and the poor, and this is where Muhammad comes in. He is known throughout his life as loyal, fair, honest, a man of good judgment. He's been understood by Muslims since the time of his life as the model of perfect conduct in all senses. So he's the perfect leader, the perfect friend, the perfect husband, the perfect man of God, everything. If you're a Muslim and you're wondering how to respond to any situation that life throws at you, your first move is to consider the life of Muhammad. Consider his actions and the model that he presented. Muhammad is not to Muslims, however, what Jesus is to Christians. As far as analogies go, and Prothero mentions this one, it's imperfect, but it's close. What Christ is to Christianity, the Quran is to Islam. Muhammad was a man, not God, an exemplary model, but not incarnated deity. So he dealt in his life with his own fair share of trials. Muhammad was born in 570 CE. He's orphaned at a young age and is cared for by his grandfather and then by his uncle. As a young man, he works in the caravan trade, which is thriving in and around Mecca, and at 25, he marries a wealthy widow named Khadijah, who is herself a successful merchant, and he continues his work with her. During this time, he gains a reputation even more so as a trustworthy and honest man, and that during a time of severe social and economic changes. And you know how easy it is when all of the, everyone's money and the sense of power is shifting, how easy it is to get a bad reputation, especially if you're taking on the role of leadership. This man kept an honest reputation. He was a good man across the board. Even those who did not agree with him saw this in him, and so he was sought out for diplomatic reasons throughout his life. Not only was he an upstanding citizen, though, he was also reflective and contemplative. He regularly retreated to a cave on Mount Hira to meditate and to seek insight. And it's there at the age of 40, during the month of Ramadan, that on the night of excellence and power, Muhammad the merchant becomes Muhammad the messenger of God. I'm going to digress here a little bit to talk more in depth than I did last time about images. What you see here is an example of an artistic form known as the hilya. And if you look closely, you can see that there's Arabic script written into the form of the rose. Most often, the hilya is not iconic. That is, where there is a rose, which I quite like, there would most often simply be text. The text is a physical description of Muhammad. It says in words what he looks like, and it's almost always bordered in exquisitely wrought calligraphic or geometric patterns. This is one of the most common forms in which Muhammad is physically represented, albeit indirectly. While the Quran includes no explicit prohibitions of images, there are moments in the Hadith, which we will talk a little bit more about and Prothero talks about in the Hadith, which are it's the canon of sayings about the words and deeds of the Prophet that comprise the secondary sacred texts of the tradition, and for which there's a great tradition of ensuring authenticity. So, Muslim scholars know how far back they can directly trace each of these sayings, and they work very hard to maintain authentic sayings only within the Hadith. But there are moments in the Hadith when it is said that no living thing should be represented in artistic form or in figural form. And we'll talk later about the foundations of Muslim faith, but the central one is the unity of God. Muslims are in general very careful about making sure that Allah is given his due, is honored, loved, respected, and worshipped, and that his powers are not misapplied to humans. God creates life, humans do not. So to be careful, humans should not presume to create representations of life. It's just too close to God's own work. And that's a common these days, especially in Sunni rather than Shia, which has flipped, but that's a common line. And this has meant that throughout history, the Muslim world has never developed a strong tradition of figural representation. Here, we see an example of the most common form of artistic representation. This is a calligraphic image of the name of God, Muhammad, and his first 4 successors, who are known as the rightly guided caliphs. The Muslim world has reached heights in terms of aesthetic calligraphy that we see nowhere else in the world. And this exemplifies the care with which artists have sought not to pretend to godlike powers. But as I said last time, that doesn't mean that there were never portraits of Muhammad or the other major figures in the Muslim narrative. One thing that we never see, though, is sculptural representations, artistic pieces in the round, figural representations in 3 dimensions, because that just comes far too close to approximating life. But here we do see another example, this one from the 15th century, of a representation of Muhammad, again here receiving his first revelation from Gabriel. This one's from Afghanistan. In most of the Muslim world, imagistic representation has been rare since this period. Iran is an exception. The Shia majority there have accepted images of the Prophet far more readily than has most of the Muslim world. And in Iran, one can, to this day, find postcards with portraits of Muhammad on them. This image brings us back to our storyline. Muhammad, remember, became the messenger of God at this moment when the heavenly intermediary Gabriel visits him and says, recite. In keeping with the tradition of the Abrahamic prophets, Muhammad was at first reluctant. He tells the angelic voice, I can't. Twice more, Gabriel says, recite, recite. And twice more, he tries to abdicate his divinely appointed mission. I can't. I don't know what to say. I'm not going to be the good one for this. This is not going to be a good job for me. But then he found his words, and when he did, they just kept coming. The first revelation is contained in the Quran, Surah or chapter 96, verses 1 to 5. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, recite in the name of your Lord who created man from clots of blood. Recite, your Lord is the most bountiful one, who by the pen taught man what he did not know. This is the translation you have in your Readings from Tradition posted on Moodle through Encores, but it's worth making a quick note here about translations. Quranic Arabic is the language in which Allah chose to speak through Gabriel to Muhammad, and so within the tradition, more so even than in other traditions, translations are looked upon with a great deal of skepticism. They're not accepted as fair representations of the words of Allah, and chanting of the Quran is a practice widely engaged in by Muslims. Some Muslims memorize the entire text and are honored within their communities for doing so, but they do so in Quranic Arabic. So, upon first hearing the voice of Gabriel, Muhammad was all kinds of traumatized. He didn't believe it. He thought he might be losing his mind. He wanted to run away. He wanted even to kill himself. But he heard the voice, and the voice identified itself. And he did run. He ran to Khadijah, his wife, and he said to her, cover me. Cover me. And this makes me think of Bruce Springsteen. So if you don't know that song, you can look it up. It's called Cover Me. And it's kind of, in a far more secular and not at all religious vein, sort of a similar sentiment of just cover me. I need somebody to cover me, And she did. She comforted him, she consoled him, and she helped to convince him. So for 22 years after that momentous night, Muhammad continues to receive revelations. These revelations are the Quran. The word Quran itself means reading or recitation, so it's a word itself that means sort of recite. The Quran is 114 surahs, or again chapters, organized according to length, not chronology, and Prothero talks a bit about how this narrative plays out, so that the longer surahs come first and the shorter ones come later. In total, it's a little shorter than the Christian New Testament, and in general, the shorter, earlier surahs were received in Mecca, and in the text can't come after the longer, later surahs, which were received in Medina. So the revelations that Muhammad first received tend to be shorter, and they come at the end of the book. The text of the Quran is regarded as perfect, eternal, unchangeable. It was collected, not edited, into an official authorized version within 30 years of Muhammad's death. That's fast. Centuries faster than the Christians, for instance, codified their own sacred texts. So we'll close today. We'll close today with the Hijra, the Great Migration. The Great Migration of the Ummah from Mecca to Medina. In Mecca, from 611 to 622 CE, Muhammad was a prophet of God to a polytheistic pagan society. He brought the moral vision of ethical monotheism to pre-Muslim tribalism, brought a sense of justice under one God, which means that everyone's answerable, regardless of your tribal affiliation or your social status or your wealth. Everyone's answerable. And then in 622, with the Hijra, Muhammad takes on the role of the statesman. The idea that everyone was answerable and the rejection of polytheism undermined the religious prestige and the economy of the Meccans as keepers of the Kaaba. Muhammad threatened revenues and tribal political authority because he claimed that all true believers belonged to a single universal community, the Ummah, that transcended tribal bonds, that wasn't, again, not ethnically, not nationally defined, not tribally defined, nothing like that, not monetarily defined. It's single, it's universal, it's defined by belief and adherence. Things got tense. And in 620, he was invited to Yathrib to serve as an arbitrator in a tribal feud. Remember, he had a reputation as a good diplomat. And this sort of set the stage. You know, the leaders in Yathrib appreciated him, and he became familiar with the area. And under increasing and often violent pressure in Mecca, Muhammad made his move. Between July and September 622, the entire Ummah secretly, inconspicuously left Mecca for Yathrib, soon to be known as Medina. This is the Hijra, the point from which the Muslim calendar begins. And when you see the Muslim years, they're written like this: 1435 AH, and that's Latin for Anno Hegira, which is again Latin for the year of the Hijra. Muhammad was a prophet in Mecca, but in Medina he was able to create a just society, to do away with the blood feuds of the area, to create laws, and to make peace. In Mecca he was a prophet, in Medina he has power. In the history of humanity, this is a high point of political transformation, all the way from the Pyrenees to the Indus River. Bam, politics changed. Was it spread by the sword? Sure, there was some of that. But on the whole, no. So many people converted so quickly because they saw that the Islamic Empire offered a more just government than did the Byzantine Christian Empire under which they already lived. So we see this incredible expansion. But lest we lose sight of the religious or mythic underpinnings of this political narrative, I want to end here with a story. During the Hijra, Muhammad's running away from Mecca, and the Meccans are powerful and they're after him. He hides in a cave, and a spider hanging out in the entrance of the cave, very quickly weaves a web over the entrance. And those pursuing him come to the cave, and they look and they say, maybe he's in there. But wait, no, there's a spider web, and we're in a hurry, and we are going to get this guy, and we are going to kill him, so let's keep going, let's get him. He's not there. Just keep looking. So Muhammad escapes. He gets away. They do continue on. He stays in the cave long enough, right? This, for tradition, is an act of God, an act of Allah, by whose power a just society would be established in Medina. So we'll turn to the divisions that have developed within the Ummah, but next time we'll begin our discussion of some of the things that the Ummah shares in common across those divides.